Well, I'm here as I suppose, the proxy head of YARD, which today stands for Youth Advice and Reasoned Dialogue. It doesn't stand for yelling at racist dogs. It stands for Youth Advice and Reasoned Dialogue, and that's exactly what we're here to have. We're here to offer up life advice to attendees of Jordan Peterson, because that's what they're looking for. And that's, I guess, what he is, isn't it? He's a life advice offer-upper. And aside from that, I guess if that was all he was, then I probably wouldn't be here today. My issue with him is that his political application of his ideas makes him little better than a gender essentialist, someone who's a regressive, and, you know, I think his popularity has been in the political arena. So I think once we see him move more and more into that space, I wouldn't be surprised if he moved into politics in Canada after a while. We'll see him do it on a regressive social agenda, and that's really what catapulted him to fame. It isn't the self-help tips that made him famous. It's the stuff about gender pronouns. We know that.
Why I'm here is because I started watching his lectures probably a year and a half ago, and it's really helped me for life. His book's really good. People should read his book more. None of these people have read his book, right? We've read his book. It's a good book. There's no let's be a Nazi, there's no let's be far right. Nothing of what he says is far right. It's all based on psychological evidence, all scientific evidence. There's barely any opinion to it. And all of his advice that he gives you, it's nothing about, hey, let's become Nazis all together and take over the world. It's more, deal with things that you can in your own life, which will give you the confidence to deal with bigger things, and then eventually you get to a point where maybe you're able to push yourself into a position of power where you can influence more people, but it all starts from yourself. I mean, collective movements start from each individual. That's what these people don't understand. They think that collective action starts from telling people what to do. Collective action starts from a bunch of individuals that get together as a collective, and that's how you influence things. That's how you make things work. People don't understand that. People think that you need to just get one person to force 100 people to do something and that works. It doesn't work like that.
And I must say, I talked about this in a speech a little while ago. I find that a lot of that material to be not only pretty innocuous, but the same as self-help across the genre. Not my cup of tea, but I don't really take a huge amount of issue with, say, some young man who has depression using the life advice of Peterson to clean his room up and get his life in order. I find that to be, on its own, to be a pretty noble thing.
So, if people were really curious about it, actually he's been published by Rebel Media, which is a Canadian alt-right and fascist platform online that delivers consistently transphobic and racist messaging to people who read that, which is a shame.
Push is always there to confront any far right or fascist presence. We've been doing that since the beginning of, those of us involved in Push have been doing that since the beginning of 2015. Now, Jordan Peterson is really just part of that parade of far-right celebrities, very close to the likes of Lauren Southern, Stefan Molyneux, who came out last year, Milo Yiannopoulos. So he's really part of that far right that's there to pump out the misogyny and the homophobia and the racism and the transphobia that we're very well aware of. But their whole purpose in coming on these tours of Australia is to build a global far-right movement. So this is why we have to be there every time.
Well, he had said that he'd used a slippery slope argument to suggest that changes to Canadian law to allow the introduction of potential sanctions for people who didn't address people by their correct pronouns would lead to people being in jail. Not only was that just a slippery slope, traditional conservative argument that hasn't panned out because the laws have been introduced and it certainly hasn't happened to him, let alone anyone else. But I suppose more importantly, these are the kinds of slippery slope arguments that are wildfire for a conservative fan base. Peterson's just another one of these people that's been able to capitalise and thrive off of a conservative fan base, which has been important to many people's careers since the culture wars really exploded in America and Canada in around 2015. These are the things that he stands for. These are the things that I object to him on the basis of. And that's why I'm here today, to offer his fans life advice.
You can't just say this is right and this is wrong and this can never be changed. That's what leads to authoritarianism. That's what leads to genocide. I mean, the Nazis, all the Nazis thought they were right for exterminating the Jews. We know that that's not probably a good idea, you know. But how do you know that? You watch Nazi Germany and you say, okay, this is wrong, and then you don't do it again. And we haven't had an ethnic genocide of Jews since 1945. It's happened in other places, and when it happens in other places, we take the example of, okay, well, it's not just this group that can't be affected by it, it's every group. You can't just ethnically genocide a group. It's not on. So that's now a worldwide understanding, and the people that do that they're the fringe. They're the outsiders. It's not mainstream. It's not mainstream to walk down the street and say, let's go kill the Jews, and everyone says, yeah, let's do it. That's not mainstream, because through your own life and through the history of the world, you'll learn right and wrong, and countries will learn right and wrong, and they're malleable. They'll change to it depending on what it is.
Well, he is that bad, and he is actually among those people. So, for example, he has been on several YouTubes with Stefan Molyneux. He has been there defending Lauren Southern as she's been part of the blocking of refugees coming into Europe. He's been financed up to about $170,000 by Rebel Media, which is a far-right, internet media site that is also very thick with the likes of Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux. So he's part of them.
There is absolutely no critical thinking. The slogans that I see here, that I cannot think of a single quote that directly matches what they claim he believes in. There's nothing at all. I mean, what, he's a racist? When he said anything racist, he's not said a single racist thing in any recorded video or audio of Jordan Peterson I've ever read or seen or watched that has firmly established him as a racist. Literally nothing. If anything, he follows the Martin Luther King character of judge people on the content of the character, not the colour of their skin. That's sensible. But they need a boogeyman to attack. They need someone to attack. They can't. If there's no one to attack, there's nothing to fight. They want conflict. There needs to be a conflict.
That connection, basically, with far-right ideas and fascism, they're sort of an overlapping, even though, as you say, they are quite distinct from each other. So it's the likes of Jordan Peterson and the others who are further enabling fascists. We expect fascists to be here tonight, for example. And we know that when Lauren Southern and Stefan Molyneux were here, fascists were there as their security guards. So there's a tightness there, even though we do have to distinguish between the likes of that far right and fascists.
If you can just get your minds out of trying to destroy Western civilization for 5 minutes, then please say it with me now. The one thing that will save all of Western civilization and these young men. Say it with me. Life advice! Life advice! Life advice! Life advice! Life advice!
I think that there's probably a noble aspect to the self-help aspect of the things that L. Ron Hubbard said. And there's also a creative element with the science fiction aspect. These aren't the issues. We take issues with other things. I do believe in taking every one of these figures as you find them and making a decision as to what you're going to do and whether you're going to protest at all in response to that. I'm not obliged to come out to every one of these events, and I'm not obliged to do the same thing in every instance. But again, the self-help stuff is the most innocuous part of Peterson. But there's a really good Reddit group called Ex-Lobsters. I was just reading through it recently. It is very interesting, and it features people who were swept up in the Peterson wave and are now questioning themselves, and they've moved on and they're questioning what they were swept up into at the time. It's worth a read, and you'll find that a lot of them were taken in by the self-help and then led into the regressive political ideas after that. That's what I take issue with. I don't mind the self-help stuff. It's everything else.
He likes to talk about the essential truths of feminine is chaos and masculine is order. That these are the essential truths throughout time and they cannot be denied. That's a Western concept. He understands that gender identity is not binary in every culture of the world. and he would prefer to erase the other cultures that don't necessarily agree with that. And to me, that's pretty fucking racist.
Well, we talked before about gender pronouns, and I guess that's part of a broader platform that's anti-LGBT rights. Also, at around the same time, I think it was 2015 or 16, Peterson was campaigning against legislative reform for same-sex marriage. It's no accident, you know. These are, when you take his, again, gender essentialist and I think fundamentalist Christian views, and you apply them to politics, that's when you have a case, in his worldview, for saying that we need to remain seeing gender in a strict binary form. It railroads trans people. It railroads LGBT people. It's done it in practice. This has been what's catapulted him to fame. We know that.
He wants to erase sexual homophobia, saying that sexual orientation doesn't really matter. Marriage equality here in Australia is barely a year old. Okay, he wants to erase sexism and say that it doesn't explain things. Then why an average one woman per week in Australia killed by her partner?
Look, that is a danger, and it's sort of telling us why the alt-right part of the far right mobilizes audiences for the likes of Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's had sellout events such as the Sydney Opera House. And the thing is that he is attracting particularly young white men. And what he's doing for them is he's blaming feminism for their personal problems rather than the system. So what do we say to people like that, to disaffected people like that? Well, it's not feminism that's their problem. It's the system, it's the capitalist system, which is alienating them and the source of their misery. So it's really a battle of ideas.
I think that Peterson doesn't have the stature that he once did. I think he's so eccentric, and I think it clashes with his humorlessness. So I don't think that he's well known. I don't think he's at the front of the tidal wave of conservative thought anymore. I think that he's being left behind, and there'll be new people to take his place. But I still fundamentally disagree with it. I think people need to know, and that's why I'm coming out to offer attendees life advice.
Peterson's not far right. He's not on the side of the Nazis. He's not on the side of the communists. He's on the side of take individual responsibility, and from there you can build something.
The Parkville Youth Detention Centre is overcrowded, and all the kids are rioting and jumping on the roof, trying to get out and tell you that prisons don't work. That's just causing more violence. So the Victorian Labor Party is